Alright guys, welcome back to another video. I wanted to do a quick one just discussing the mods that I've got on the WR because I do get a lot of questions, and it is the most modified bike that I've ever had, or the most mods that I've done to a bike. I've got a big list here, so yeah, I'm just going to work through it in no particular order, just the way that I've written them down. And the first things we'll look at is the protection bits on the bike. So the B&B Bash Plate. Now this actually came with the bike, but thankfully it's a bash plate that I would have chosen anyway. I've used B&B in the past on my Tenere 700 and my CRF 250L, and I'm really happy with their products. Really thick, definitely going to do the job for what I need. And the other item that came with my bike were the Barkbusters. These are the Ego ones. And again, I would have gone with the Barkbusters myself. Probably would have gone with the VPS over the Ego because I think you get a little bit more space, but that's all right. They look pretty cool and very protective. So they were actually the only two mods that came with the bike. Other protective bits that I have added since is the B&B master brake cylinder cover or protection. That's just, you know, you drop the bike and land on a rock awkwardly. It's not going to destroy that and leave you without a rear brake. And I've gone and added, which I really like these ones, there's the Sandman case saver, which sits up in there. I'm not sure if the camera's going, oh yep, it's picking it up. And then this one here, which is the Sandman front sprocket cover. The reason I went with these over the stock, what was here stock, was that the case saver was just a bit of rubber. I didn't really trust it if, you know, the chain was to snap and whack up against the case, or picks up a rock or piece of metal awkwardly. I just have more faith that that, you know, actual piece of metal is going to do a better job. And then with regards to the front sprocket cover, the stock one was plastic. You couldn't actually see the front sprocket properly through it. If it was really muddy, it'd all get caked up in there. So here you still got the protection, but you can actually see what's going on there. And another Sandman item that I got is the chain guard. Now, the stock one is just a plastic piece. This probably still weighs less than the plastic piece, and it just looks cool. It suits the color of the bike, the blue. So they are all the. Oh no, sorry, hold on. Another B&B piece is the Radiator Guards. I went with B&B because, again, I've bought their products, really happy with them. There are other options like Force, but yeah, I'll just stick with B&B because that's what I know. And yeah, that is all the protective bits on the bike. So next up is the fuel tank, which is probably one of the most obvious. I've gone with the Safari fuel tank, and the reason I actually want to speak about the fuel tank next, after the Radiator Guard, is that in order to mount this fuel tank brace, which the early Safari tanks weren't shipped with them. So what would happen with those ones is there would be a little bit of movement in the tank. Now they ship with this brace, and now the tank can't move. However, with the B&B, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with the Force, is I needed to cut a piece of the guard so that it could actually fit. So yeah, for those of you that want to run the brace and a B&B guard, you're going to need to cut or modify the radiator guard to fit that. And the reason I went with Safari over the IMS, so the Safari is 13.5 litres, or 14 maybe. Sorry, it's 14, and the IMS is 18, is one, just from what I've seen online, the IMS seems to have more problems with leaking. And two, the Safari was almost half the price, so I'll take that 4 litres less, and yeah, deal with it. Run a fuel bladder if I need it. Another obvious one is the GYTR Exhaust. The reason I chose the GYTR over the other options, which are the FMF pipes, is that you get to run the stock heat shield. So if I chuck luggage over, it's not going to cause any issues. And I was able to pick this one up secondhand actually for a pretty good price, so I'm pretty happy with it. It sounds pretty damn awesome as well. And another thing related to the exhaust is the removal of the servo motor, which runs this exhaust valve thing at certain RPMs. The GYTR can't accommodate for that, so I removed that whole system and then added an EXUP delete dongle thing, just so that the check engine light on the bike doesn't come on. So that was a little thing that you need to add if you're removing that whole system. Moving on is the handlebars, or just the whole front end. So here I replaced the stock handlebars for these Pro Taper Contour Windham bend bars. I just went with those because they were very popular, and I went with the gold because it suits the forks. In order to mount those, I had to get the risers or bar adapters. These are risers. I think they're 0.7 inch, and these are the RHK ones, and that's so that you can fit the fatter bar. I had the 7/8 bars, which are the stock ones, and these are the 1/8 or something. They're the fat bars. And to go along with those, I've added the Pro Taper pillow tops, which are actually really nice. They definitely help with vibrations. And as you can see here, I've got just a standard quad lock on a vibration dampener, but I've also got the USB here. I could have gone with the wireless charger. The reason I chose to get the USB is that I can also run this into the tank bag and charge my GoPro batteries. So that was the only reason I went with that. Eventually I'll probably get some other USB power because that's only the one port, but for now it does the job. And also, while I'm talking about the handlebars, I've got just the double takes. Again, they're the most common ones. They're good because I can move them in when doing tight technical single track. They're a bit more robust than the stock ones. So yeah, overall they do a pretty good job. Yeah, and in terms of the quad lock, I forgot to mention, the reason I went with the vibration dampener is I've seen online so many people have issues with their phones, cameras, the optical sensor getting stuffed up. Anecdotally, a friend of mine had an issue where their camera was stuffed, so I've run the vibration dampener, haven't run into any issues, which is great. All right, so next is the tires. So I replaced the stock ones with an MT21 on the front and a D606 on the rear. These are the most common tires that people run on dual sport bikes. They've been around for forever from what I can tell. And yeah, there was not too much thought put into that. Just the fact that everyone raves on about how good they are. I've run them now, I've put about almost 3,000 Ks on them. They're still doing pretty well. The rear will be done pretty soon, I reckon, just with the way that I ride it. So I'll be replacing that in the near future. When I fitted these, I also fitted rim locks, both front and rear, so that I can you know, run lower pressures and not worry about the tube spinning and tearing the valve stem. So all pretty common things. Another big mod was the seat concept seat. This made a huge difference. Stock seat is absolutely garbage. This is probably one of the most important mods, I would say, if you're doing any kind of adventure riding, because you don't want to be riding uncomfortable. And the stock seat, even with a what are they called, seat cushion, the Air Hawk, it just still was not good enough. It's way too narrow. So seat concepts is great. It's not amazing, like my V-Strom is so much more comfortable, but it does the job. Moving just a little further back is I've got a Nomad or Nomadic rack underneath here. It's very small, very lightweight, and very cheap. That's the reason I went with the Nomadic rack. B&B do a rack, but it is it was probably double the price of this one. So I went with that. And I've also added a tail tidy here, which is the just the GYTR one. Now you can't run a number plate light with it. You'll have to do your own solution if you want to run the number plate light. And yeah, that's that. Let's talk about the luggage now. So I have got the Nelson Rig Enduro tank bag up front. I have run the bigger one, I forget the name of that one, on my T7, and that's a great tank bag. It's probably better for adventure riding, but I also use this bike as an enduro bike, so having the Nelson Rig Enduro tail bag, which is a lot smaller, is nice. Makes it a little bit easier to stand up and not have it get in the way. And on the rear, this is actually a recent addition. It's the Nelson Rig Trails End tank bag. This thing's awesome. It can pop up to get bigger. You don't notice it, like, unless obviously if you load it, you are. But it's perfect even for day rides, just put your tools in, some water, so you don't have to carry it on your back. So I pretty much leave that on all the time now. Why not? All right, moving on is the, I guess, the drivetrain and everything down here. So I've kept the stock 13-tooth front sprocket. I may move up to a 14, which I'll talk about shortly, because on the rear I've put a 48 tooth. So the stock is 43, much bigger. So what that means is much more acceleration, but it is higher RPM when on the freeways. However, you do have more pulling power in 6th, which is a lot nicer, because 6th gear on the stock gearing was just useless. Now I may move up to a 1450, which keeps the gearing somewhat similar, but the main reason for that is because of the chain slider. It does get eaten up more if you're running the 13 tooth, and you have to replace that quite often. By running the 14, you have a little bit more distance between the chain slider and the chain, so you don't have to replace that as regularly. And as you'll notice, I have an aftermarket chain as well, which is an RK chain. It was 120 link, and I've broken that down to 112 link. The reason I went with the aftermarket chain is that the stock chain doesn't fit. It's too short. The stock chain's 108 link. You need 112 links to make the 1348 work. So that is that. And last but not least, which is the most recent modification, is the Parabellum Rally windscreen. This thing is awesome. Like, it looks awesome. And the reason that I went with the Parabellum in particular is that it is a lot more angled, like straight, which I don't know if that's bad for aero, but I wanted to keep it away from, like, close to my face, because I'm using it as an enduro bike. If I'm going off-road, I don't want to whack it. Also just looks cooler as opposed to the other ones that come up more this way. But yeah, that does a good job of keeping stuff off the phone, like bugs and dust and mud and dirt, but also keeps the wind off of your chest, and it kind of distributes it a little bit higher, which sometimes can be bad if it's causing turbulent air around the helmet, but that's not the case with this one. So that's still gonna, we'll check back in a couple of months of riding to see how well that stands up, but so far so good. But yeah, they're the mods for the WR. It's definitely by far the most modified bike I've owned, and the most mods that I've done to a bike, but it's gotten it to a point where it's just the perfect lightweight adventure bike. Reliable, lightweight, I can take it through pretty much anything an enduro bike can go through. And if I want to do longer adventures, I've got Nelson Rig saddlebags, which I just chuck on. And yeah, and I've got a larger rear bag if I need it. But the bike is awesome. I honestly can't ever see myself selling it, because there's just pros and cons to, all dual sports. But I think the WR250R is at the top of the list as one of the best still, which is crazy because it came out in 2008. So yeah, hopefully this has been informative, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.